Britain on Wednesday approved Pfizer Incorporation's COVID-19 vaccine, jumping ahead of the rest of the world in the race to begin the most crucial mass inoculation program in history. Prime Minister Boris Johnson touted the green light from Britain's medicine authority as a global win and a ray of hope for the end of the pandemic, though he recognized the logistical challenges of vaccinating an entire country of 67 million. Britain's Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency, MHRA, granted emergency use approval to the vaccine developed by Pfizer and German biotechnology partner BioNTech, which they say is 95% effective in preventing illness just 23 days after Pfizer published the first data from its final stage clinical trial. International drug makers and researchers have been racing to develop vaccines for months, and Britain's authorization coming first may be seen as a coup for a government that has faced criticism over its handling of the crisis. Britain's swift decision drew criticism from Brussels, where in an unusually blunt statement the EU regulator said its longer procedure was more appropriate and based on more evidence. UK Health Secretary Matt Hancock said Britain would start vaccinating those most at risk of dying early next week after it gets 800,000 doses from Pfizer's manufacturing centre in Belgium, in which tests on that first batch had been completed. Johnson said life would not return to normal right away, but there was now certainty that things would improve. He said vaccines would not be mandatory but strongly encouraged eligible people to take them. The speed of the rollout depends on how fast Pfizer can manufacture and deliver the vaccine and the extreme temperature of -70°C at which it must be stored, as it can be kept for 5 days in a regular fridge. Britain has ordered 40 million doses of the Pfizer vaccine, enough for just under a third of the population, as 2 shots are needed per person to gain immunity. Meanwhile, many universities across the United Kingdom have started mass testing their students for COVID-19 ahead of Christmas. The move is designed to allow students to return to their families over the holiday period without risk of spreading coronavirus across the country. Temporary testing centres have been opened at selected universities where hundreds of thousands are expected to get tested. Each student will be tested a second time 3 days after their first test. A negative test will mean students are permitted to leave during a travel window that begins on Thursday. Pfizer Corporation's chief executive Albert Bourla on Wednesday said he was confident that by the end of 2021 there would be more vaccine doses required to fight the COVID-19 pandemic. His remarks came after Britain approved a vaccine produced by Pfizer and its German biotechnology partner BioNTech on Wednesday. The two companies said their vaccine is 95% effective. The British Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency MHRA granted emergency use approval just 23 days after Pfizer published the first data from its final stage clinical trial. The vaccine is due to be rolled out next week in Britain. US and EU regulators are sifting through the same Pfizer vaccine trial data but have yet to give their approval. Bourla said the vaccine would be an effective tool in fighting the spread of the disease, but governments needed to ensure that other measures are not relaxed in the meantime. Bourla, in a roundtable discussion of the American Hellenic Chamber of Commerce on Wednesday, said governments have to make in a very strategic way and they need to listen to the experts.
I think what the government should do it is to make sure that as the vaccine is distributed to them in the beginning, in the first months of the pandemic, they will have the responsibility to distribute those doses. They will have the responsibility to select who should receive the doses first and then who should be the second, etc. And given that the production will always be in the first 6 months less than what the demand globally. And they need to do that in a strategic way. And they need to make sure that they listen to the experts and that they are utilizing the vaccine in the way that they can minimize as quick as possible the burden population.
The number of coronavirus cases recorded in Poland passed 1 million on Wednesday, December 2nd, as the government said it has agreed to buy 45 million vaccine doses amidst a second wave of the pandemic that is proving more serious than the first. Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki said during a news conference in the city of Lodz, Poland, was hoping to deploy its vaccine program by February, adding that it would cost between 5 and 10 billion zlotys. Morawiecki hopes the vaccines, which will be free of charge and voluntary, will be available to citizens by February of 2021. The daily number of new cases has dropped in Poland since a surge in October and early November, but the country has one of the lowest testing rates in the European Union and one of the highest proportions of positive tests. On Wednesday, a further 13,855 coronavirus cases and 609 deaths were reported, bringing the total to 1,013,747 confirmed cases and 18,208 deaths. More on COVID-19 vaccines. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo said on Wednesday that New York's first coronavirus vaccine delivery of 170,000 doses will arrive on December 15th.
The first vaccine delivery to New York will be 170,000. The federal government distributes the vaccine by percentage of population of that state. So state's population divided by available dosages is what the state gets. There's no discretion in how much the state gets. It's purely a percent of population, which is what they say at least. We expect, if all safety and efficacy approvals are granted, those doses will arrive on December 15th. By the end of December, the administration suggests that there'll be enough to vaccinate 20 million people with 2 dosages, which is 40 million dosages. That means 6% of Americans. Gives you an idea of where we're going to be coming into January.
Cuomo said those 6% will be prioritized to healthcare workers, seniors in congregate facilities, and the like. Cuomo also criticized a data-sharing agreement put forward by the government that he said could dissuade undocumented immigrants from participating in taking the vaccine. He expressed concern that data on those receiving the vaccine could end up in the hands of U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Later in the day, New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio toured the Pandemic Response Lab (PRL) in the Alexandria Center for Life Science in the Manhattan borough of New York City. The lab processes 20,000 COVID-19 tests a day for New York Center Health and hospitals and returns results to testing facilities and New Yorkers within 24 hours. 48 NBA players tested positive for COVID-19 as players returned to their team's home markets for the start of the 2020-2021 season on December 22nd. The NBA said it tested 546 players as part of its initial return to market testing phase, which kicked off between November 24th and November 30th. Anyone who tested positive was placed in isolation until cleared under league rules. The league had few issues keeping its bubble environment at Walt Disney World free of the novel coronavirus, as it carried out the end of the delayed season earlier this year, but now faces many of the same challenges other North American leagues have playing in the COVID-19 era. With the exception of the Toronto Raptors, teams will play in their home markets this season with individual player workouts starting this week and group workouts beginning Sunday.
Deforestation in Brazil's Amazon rainforest has skyrocketed to a 12-year high in 2020. Government data released on Monday showed more than 11,000 square kilometres have been wiped away. That's a patch of roughly 7 times the size of London taken out of the world's largest rainforest. And it's also up 10% from 2019. This year, fires have blazed through the Amazon, and environmentalists have blamed the government. The devastation tracks with the time since President Jair Bolsonaro took office. Bolsonaro has weakened Brazil's environmental agency and called for more commercial farming and mining, arguing it will lift the region out of poverty. Critics say this has encouraged illegal ranchers, miners, and land grabbers to clear the forest. The rate of destruction means Brazil will miss its own target to stop deforestation that it set over a decade ago under a climate change law. It's not clear what consequences there will be for missing that goal, but federal officials say the latest figures are actually progress. Technically, 2019 saw a much higher jump in the rate of deforestation, even though the amount of forest destroyed in 2020 is at decade highs. And on Monday, Vice President Hamilton Mourão said that was a sign efforts to fight deforestation were, quote, beginning to bear fruit. The destruction of the Amazon has caused international outrage. As the world's largest rainforest, its protection is crucial for stopping climate change because of the vast amounts of carbon dioxide it absorbs.